What's up, guys? Today we're going to get some more work done on my '01 CRV. This video might be a little bit more easy for some of you guys that have a little bit more mechanical know-how, a little bit more automotively inclined, but I'm going to do a walkthrough regardless. I'm going to change my radiator today. I'm also going to swap out both radiator hoses and any coolant lines that are on the back of the engine. Now, a lot of these hoses you can buy pre-molded if you choose to do so. The only one that I will buy is that horseshoe shaped one. You can't really use a regular piece and then bend it because it tends to kink at the end of it. So that's the only one that I buy that is pre-molded for this application. Of course, the upper and lower radiator hoses are already fit and they're made to fit. Using a new radiator cap. I like these fail-safe thermostats because if they get stuck, they only get stuck at open, so it's better than being stuck closed. Of course, a new radiator. And for the rest of the hoses, you can pick this up at your auto parts store. We're using the 5/16 and the 5/8 size. These are perfect for replacing the hoses on the back of the idle air control valve or the fast idle thermo valve. And then these are perfect size for, the 5/8 are perfect size for any of the heater lines that connect the heater core to the rest of the engine. First thing we need to do is drain the coolant. On the bottom right side, you'll see the fill plug and there's a little hole right here. Just spin it loose and let's get all that coolant fully drained. Now, although we're draining it, there will still be residual coolant coming out of like the heater hoses and some in the back. So be prepared for it to be a pretty messy job. I laid some towels down, some cardboard down underneath the vehicle. I also have raised my CRV because on the back where the idle air control valve is, there's a coolant line which goes from there and it goes underneath the intake manifold to there's the water tube which connects the water pump to the thermostat housing. So hopefully we can get to it. I know there's a bracket which connects the intake manifold to the block, which is a support bracket. We're going to see about getting that one changed. I'm pretty sure we should be able to access it as well. With the coolant pretty much drained from the radiator, we want to get the fans removed so we can get access to pulling the radiator out. Remove all these 10 mils. You have these two brackets right here. You have a nut that holds the AC line. You have another one right here. Remove the hose for the overflow tank. And then remove all these 10 mils on the fans. 1, 2, 3, 4. Next, remove both these hose clamps for the upper radiator hose. Go ahead and completely remove it. After getting that hose removed, I kind of realized it looks like we might be able to just pull the fans up. We can just move this AC line a little bit. Pull the fans up with the radiator still attached. And it's fine that we took these off. We're going to remove them anyway because we're going to reinstall the fans onto the new radiator. So now we need to get the wiring harnesses disconnected for both of the fans. On this side, mine was already loose. There's a clip here. I'm just going to disconnect it. I don't know if it's plugged in somewhere. I will try to search around right now and see if it was. And then this one, the fan and the switch are both connected to the fan as well. There's a little clip here. Let me show you how to get that one removed. So this one, you'll see that little pin clip right there. If you put your thumb on it and push it towards the fan and then slide it out, you can pull it off of the fan assembly. And then we need to squeeze on the top side. You'll see the clip here. Squeeze that down and then pull them apart from one another. The same goes for that clip on this fan also. And lastly, we need to disconnect the oil cooler line. Since I have an automatic, go ahead and squeeze both those clips, slide the clips down, and try to slide both these off. We're going to pull the lines off with the radiator so we try to make less of a mess. And then we'll reinstall both of those lines onto the new radiator while it's out of the car. We still have the lower radiator hose connected. So instead of disconnecting it down there, which it's a lot harder to get to with the fan in the way, we're going to remove the intake really quick. We're going to do that anyways because there's a lot of hoses back here we're going to replace. So remove the two 10 mils that are attaching it to the shock tower. Remove this one. Mine has a screwdriver, so I'm going to put it in there. Remove the band, which tightens it up against the throttle body. And then we should be able to just pull it out. There's still another 10 mil here, but that one kind of just slides it into place. It doesn't need to be removed. Now I'll go ahead and remove the hose clamp for the lower radiator hose, which attached to the thermo housing. We're going to remove it, and then we're going to pull the hose off and just kind of pull it up here and tuck it underneath the AC line. That way we can just slide all of it out together. Now we have a lot of access to all these hoses back here. So go ahead and start by removing them one by one. I'm going to remove this hose right here first. This one goes to right here on the head. Go ahead and get that one pulled off. Underneath that we have another small hose. It's right here. You'll see the clamp. That hose slides around and it connects to the bottom of this little assembly right here, which in fact loops around. And we're going to change out this one also, so you can remove all of those. One little tip, I like to spray all of the hoses using this silicone lubricant, because once you get the clamp pulled together, it seems to make it so much easier just to slide off of the hose. And so I'll do that on all of them before I attempt to remove any of the clamps. One tip I almost forgot, be careful when removing this one. This is a plastic valve. So if you're using your pliers and you're trying to squeeze at the hose around it, you don't want to damage that one. Same with the two coming out of the firewall. Those are actually part of the heater core, and those bend really, really easily. We do not want to damage those and potentially create a leak. Now we can work on getting the next ones. I'll try to get this out of the way. I'm going to remove these two on the thermo housing and the top one for that horseshoe shaped hose. If you're experiencing trouble getting them off, you can cut them if you need. Like this one I went and cut here, and I sliced it right down the center. That way I could slide it off. It made it a lot easier to do so, because we're replacing all of them, so it's no longer necessary to keep these old hoses. Moving on a little farther, this back here is the hose I was talking about, which connects to the bottom of the IACV. That is the only hose I feel like it's going to give us trouble. Looks like the clamp is facing that way like this. I'm going to spray some silicone lubricant on it. What I'm going to try to do is reach in there. I don't really seem to have room from the bottom or the other side. I'm going to try to grab the clamp and spin it around, so hopefully I can slide my pliers in and just slide it off. Okay, I was having a little bit of a tough time to get to that one trying to spin it. I removed the little air plenum. It has 4 10 bolts. Remove those, and then I dropped in a hanger and bent it into the form of a little hook. See, I was able to put the light down here. I was able to capture it and spin it around. I think I can get the rest now with my pick or maybe some of my angled pliers. And that gave me ample room to slide it off. You know, I was thinking about it right now, and it's probably going to be a little bit difficult getting that hose on, but we're still going to attempt it. So what I'm going to do, another little trick, is I like to put this pry bar in, and I'll put it at the base of it. I'll find a place where I can pry, like on the edge of the thermal housing or something. That way when you pry it, it slides the hose right off. I probably don't want to do it on this particular water outlet here, so I'll try to find a different spot. Now we need to remove this hose, the bottom of the throttle body. That one connects to the bottom of the idle air control valve. What I like to do is remove the two 12mm bolts, and then you can pull it away It makes it so much easier to get to the clamps and remove those and then get the hoses off. Next we need to remove the last two hoses from the heater core. There's a clamp here on the side of the heater valve, so remove that one and then get this portion of the hose removed. And then I think I might try to get up from underneath. Looks like there's a lot of room where I can get to the bottom of these clips. If they were turned around this way, it would have been so much easier to grab them from here. But I'm gonna try from the bottom and I'll let you know which way worked best for me. Getting both of those clamps removed was so much easier from the bottom. If you slide up under your CRV, right back in here through the back of the subframe. Actually just reached up my arm in this way, and then I was able to use my pliers and slide both them off. Very easy if you get it from this angle. We're trying to be careful on those. What I do, I'll just cut them off first. And then the last pieces, I'll just slice them straight down from the top with a fresh blade that I was using, and then peel them off slowly. I'm not trying to squeeze or damage the heater core at all. Now all the coolant hoses are removed, I feel like the hardest part is over. It could be super tedious getting to some of these, like squeezing them off, cutting them, and just that one that was underneath the intake manifold, that one is probably the hardest one to get to. The rest of these aren't so difficult. But once we got to here, now let's go ahead and remove the thermostat. This one's really easy. Just go ahead and plug the sensor, the fan switch, and then remove the 10mm bolt for the ground wiring. And then once that's off, you'll see here on the top, and then on the reverse side, it's right underneath here. There's two 10mm bolts. Get those removed, then we can pop off the cover for the thermostat. What made it easy was using a U-joint on the end of the 10mm. Made it a lot easier to get from the top here, then also on the side. And once you pull it out, you should expect more coolant. To drip out onto the floor. That's why I have my cardboard and my rags down there. Now the thermostat only goes in one way. It goes into the housing like this, so pay attention. There's these two little nipples on the sides. Those actually surround this little pin right here. And you'll see it lined up in your thermal housing where they go. So once you put this one back together, it should be just like this. And then it'll slide into the thermal housing. These two will line up with the little marks inside of it. So go ahead and reinstall that, and then we'll move on to the hoses. Now we're going to start reinstalling all the hoses. I left all mine out here so I can kind of get an idea of how long I need to make the new ones. And they're all pretty simple. You can just kind of measure them with the hose and then go ahead and cut it, and then start reinstalling them. I'm going to start with the one I think is going to be the most hardest, and that's that little one underneath the intake manifold. I went ahead and slid on, I put the clamp onto the end of the piping because once I get the hose on, I think it'll be easier just to squeeze it there and slide it over the top of the hose instead of trying to feed it in together. So I'm just going to try to wiggle my hands in the back, see if I can feed it in, lube it up with the lubricant, see if I can get it to slide on relatively easily. Alright guys, and I was able to get it on. It really wasn't that difficult. It took me about 5 minutes. So I kind of actually was on top of here, had my knees on the valve cover. I was reaching back and I kind of slid it in. I had my left arm reaching in through this side, and then I lubricated up really nicely. My left hand just kind of guided it to the nipple of the water tube itself. And then when I had it on, I kind of pushed and was spinning it. But once it went on, it just kind of worked its way on. It really wasn't that difficult. I used my left fingers to help push it on all the way. And I kept spinning it. Lubrication made all the difference in the world. And then I just went ahead and slid the clip on. So that one's done. Now I can attach that to the back of the IACV. And then I'm gonna do that second hose. This one's really easy. Go ahead and connect that one really quickly. And then I'm gonna move on to this horseshoe shaped one because it's the next one that's actually back up in here, and I'll get that one put on. And then we'll work on these hoses back here. So these shouldn't really be much of a problem. Even these right here. So go ahead and start working on cutting these, getting these fit to length, and you can get all those reinstalled. And here I got all the hoses finished up. No issues with length and even the bends on them. They're perfectly fine back there. Let me see if you can see it. Everything, it's just kind of tedious putting them on. It could be a little bit of a struggle here and there. That's why the lubricant really helps slide those hoses on, makes it so much easier. Got the thermostat reconnected, and then the switch plugged in, also the ground back on there. So now we're going to work on swapping the components over to the new radiator. Now getting the radiator set up is really easy. Go ahead and start swapping your fans over. Remove any hardware that you may have not taken off already. This one just kind of slides into position on the bottom, so you have to put the bottom one in first and then bolt up the two tops. This side you have one right here, which is a 10. Looks like this one originally had one, but it's missing it. So we're going to go ahead and swap that over to that side. And if you have an automatic, you have these hoses here which go to the oil cooler part of it for the transmission fluid. If you're going to keep those lines, that's fine. It's probably smart to go ahead and replace this. This is a 3/8 inch hose. You get another couple feet for about $8 at the store. I'm going to go ahead and change it because I don't want to risk the chance of those potentially popping open or just busting open in the future. It just seems like it'd be a lot more of a hassle to change it when this is back into the car than doing it now. I can measure the length, swap them out, and they're good to go. And swapping everything easy is relatively straightforward. I added some hardware where it was missing some. Got everything bolted up. Don't forget the radiator mounts. These just pull right off. They're really easy to remove from the old radiator. I believe the old plug is normally on a little clip right here. Mine didn't have it, so I think potentially my radiator may have been changed sometime in the life of the car. When I bought it, the previous owner had owned CRV for about 3 years, and all he had was oil changes performed on it and no other maintenance. So I think that's exactly where this plug goes. So let's go ahead and drop this one in and get it connected. Sliding it in was pretty easy, a little bit easier than pulling it out. Just had to tuck both the hoses underneath the AC line. Then I went ahead and reconnected them. Very easy right there. Now I'm going to go ahead and connect the lower radiator hose and then just start connecting all the brackets and everything. We're going to get all of this finished up. With the brackets installed, go ahead and reinstall your plenum if you haven't already, and go ahead and put your intake back on. And so now everything is completely finished. What I'm going to do, I'm going to go a step further. I'm going to go ahead and refill it with the old coolant. I'm going to move it outside, and what we're going to do, we're going to drain all of the coolant from the system and flush it a few times with regular water, and then we're going to go ahead and refill it with distilled water, and then we're going to start draining it from the engine block. This is how I like to kind of flush any of the remnants out of all the old system, especially since just the other day I ended up finishing up the water pump and all of those accessories there, trying to extend the life of it, and I don't know the last time this coolant was changed, so I want to do it properly the first time, and then I can enjoy at least 60,000 miles without having to change this fluid again. And since it's being done correctly, at that point I can just drain and then refill with new fluid. So I filled it up, backed it out. What we're going to do, we're going to run some regular water through it. That's just to push out any of the old coolant that's in there, any kind of particles, whatever that might be in the system. And I know in a few videos back I just did this on a CRX that I was working on, so maybe kind of redundant. But I have a feeling that video is going to get lost in the mix. This one might retain some value in terms of having value in the future when someone else wants to watch it. So I'm going to go ahead and repeat that process now. So basically, we need to hook this up into the place of this heater hose, the one that goes to the top. So I'm just going to disconnect it right here. I'm going to pull that hose up, and then we're going to connect it just like this. So the heater hose is going to come into the end of this port. This one's going to go into the top of the head. And here's what I mean. Pull the heater hose out. I have another hose clamp here I always keep with this, makes it easier. Connect it to here, run it right back to the top of the head. So what you want to do is go ahead and turn on the water a little bit. You don't want it too hard. I just do it enough to fill it up completely. Leave the radiator cap open, and we're going to wait till the water starts running out the top of this. Now once that happens, I'm just going to go ahead and turn the car on. I'm going to let it run for about 2 minutes. And what you want to also do, when you turn your car on, turn the heater on to full blast. That way it opens the valve for the heater controls back there. So the water is coming through the water tube, going into the heater core, and then coming back out on this side as well. We want full circulation everywhere. Try to get as much of this out as possible. And then you'll start to see, this will start to look clear after a little bit once all the coolant is out of the system. And after that's done, go ahead and turn off your water. And then remove the drain plug, or at least to get it started, so you can get the rest of the coolant out of the radiator. Let that finish draining completely. And then I'm going to do it one more time. And then we're going to remove the plug on the block itself. Down here there's a 19mm plug. We're going to remove that, drain the rest of the coolant out. Then I'm going to go ahead and do one more flush using this regular water. What worked best for me in trying to get it removed was using a breaker bar and just a socket. That way you can get it started. And we'll try just a ratchet now with the 19. And once you have that loosened up with a breaker bar, you can just use a ratchet. That's what I was doing. You can just kind of see like the sludge and stuff built up inside of there. So I'm going to put this back on now. We're going to fill it up again one more time, run the car. And then we're going to drain all of the fluid and then remove the hoses. When you put it back in, you don't need to put it on all the way. But also be very cautious of this. If you're running for a long time, it might be really hot. I usually put a little bit of water on to cool it off if I feel like it's excessively too warm to put my hands close to that area. But put it back in a little bit. Go ahead and refill the water back up. Close off the plug for the radiator. When I get to this point, I'm going to start it again. Run it for about another 2 minutes. Go ahead and try to drain everything out of the radiator, and of course out of the engine block. That usually goes out really quickly. Then go ahead and put the plug back on halfway. When this is finished, go ahead and tighten it up. And then we're going to fill the system entirely with distilled water. And now we're going to fill the system up completely. And then, like I said, we're going to run it for another 2 minutes. That way we can get only distilled water moving through the system. Once it's topped off with distilled water, go ahead and start your car. We're going to let that run for about another 2 minutes. Then we're going to drain it again from the engine block and the radiator. And I'll do that about 3 times. And on that last time, I'll just drain everything completely. And wait a minute and let it drain out as much as possible. And then we'll refill everything. And once you've drained it for that last time, go ahead and reinstall the drain plug on the block, also the drain plug on the radiator. And go ahead and fill it with the radiator fluid of your choice. I prefer these Xerox Asian vehicle ones, similar to the Honda Coolant. I think it's just appropriate for our cars. And if you're wondering why we use distilled water is better than tap water because it doesn't have minerals in it. And tap water can leave behind deposits in some of the passageways. That's why we wanted to flush it, get some of the coolant out, and then use the distilled water afterwards. You're essentially supposed to use deionized water, but distilled water is really easy to pick up. Get about 94 cents a gallon at your local grocery store, so that's why I went ahead and used that. So fill it up with your coolant, top off your overflow, start it up and go ahead and check for leaks. And that is it, guys. You're finished. I hope this helped you out and change some of these hoses. I know the radiator is a pretty simple job, but some of these hoses can be kind of tricky, and it's just downright tedious doing this work. But it's done. Don't have to worry about it anymore with my new water pump and all the new seals, new timing belt, tensioner. I wanted to kind of do the whole cooling system as a whole. That way I don't have to worry about it. I want to be able to drive this car for as much as possible without having to think about potentially having a radiator pop, a hose pop open, something that's going to just create more work and potentially headache if I'm driving this thing daily. Thanks for watching, guys. Hope this helped you guys out. Appreciate it. See you next time.